If you were around in the late 90s, you couldn't escape the Taco Bell Chihuahua.
You rang?
No, really. The little dog was everywhere, appearing in commercials, hawking adorable collectibles, starring in blockbuster movie tie-ins, and possibly even invading your dreams. Then, as quickly as he appeared, the little guy vanished. So what happened? Today, we're getting to the bottom of what happened to the Taco Bell Chihuahua. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History Food channel. After that, leave us a comment and let us know what other classic mascots you would like to hear about next. Okay, time to get our paws dirty. Taco Bell already had a reputation for humorous, offbeat advertising throughout the 1990s. They didn't survive the franchise wars in Demolition Man for nothing. For instance, you may remember the Taco Neck Syndrome campaign, featuring Shaquille O'Neal, highlighting a previously unknown medical condition involving the continual rotation of a person's head in order to take proper bites of a taco. Hey, we said you may remember.
Get some more of those tacos.
Not that you would. The idea behind Taco Neck Syndrome was simple. If you ate enough tacos, your neck would permanently bend to the side to accommodate the constant motion of shoving crunchy goodness into your mouth, as Shaq helpfully demonstrated in the ads. Another campaign saw Shaq squaring off against fellow basketball giant Hakeem Olajuwon in a taco-themed Clash of Titans. Unfortunately, the Titans didn't actually get to clash because, in a twist of fate crueler than a leaky taco shell, Olajuwon had to drop out at the last minute due to an injury. In 1996, Taco Bell made a bizarre attempt at becoming part of U.S. history. On April 1st, yes, April Fool's Day, the chain announced it had purchased the Liberty Bell and were renaming it the Taco Liberty Bell. But not everyone got the joke.
This is a joke, right?
There was outrage, confusion, and more than a few patriotic tears shed. The chaos only subsided after Taco Bell admitted it was all a gag. While these off-the-wall promotions got people talking about the fast food icon, they rarely equated to spikes in sales. But Taco Bell was undeterred. The bar was set high for weirdness, and they were about to clear it with a very small dog. Enter the Chihuahua, the George Clooney of fast food mascots. Small, charismatic, and undeniably unforgettable. This little dog made its debut in a 1997 commercial. Voiced by Carlos Alazraqui of Reno 911 and Rocco's Modern Life, the Chihuahua instantly won over hearts and stomachs with the catchphrase, "Yo quiero Taco Bell," which in English means simply, "I want Taco Bell." The Taco Bell Chihuahua was a male character, but the dog in the commercials was actually female. Her name was Gidget, and in addition to the Taco Bell ads, she had a few other acting gigs, further cementing her status as the most famous Chihuahua in recent memory.
Oh, great. A talking gecko.
But it wasn't just the catchphrase that caught on. It was the Chihuahua's whole aura. The tiny dog, with its huge personality, stood as a symbol for every taco lover in the nation. Also, it was extremely adorable. Never underestimate the power of cuteness. Just look at Beanie Babies. The Taco Bell Chihuahua became a massive pop culture phenomenon, which is the natural trajectory for any tiny, sassy dog. Merchandise was everywhere, including t-shirts and even toy plush chihuahuas for kids that recited "Yo quiero Taco Bell" at the push of a button. There were even tie-ins with the 1998 Roland Emmerich blockbuster Godzilla, a gargantuan skyscraper-demolishing lizard teaming up with a tiny chihuahua calmly demanding tacos made a weird amount of sense. Sort of like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito in Twins.
Ay, caramba!
The country went similarly abuzz with the Taco Bell Chihuahua's subsequent catchphrases like
Viva Gorditas!
And anchors on ESPN SportsCenter regularly slipped "Drop the Chalupa" into highlights. Merchandise flew off shelves, and for a while, it seemed like the Taco Bell Chihuahua had succeeded where Shaq, Hakeem, and even the Liberty Bell had failed. Everything was coming up tacos, until suddenly, it wasn't. As with any meteoric rise, there must inevitably come the fall. Like an ancient Greek tragedy, but with tacos, the Taco Bell Chihuahua's success was met with controversy and a string of unfortunate events. Not long after the campaign took off, the Chihuahua started facing accusations of racism. Some individuals and groups felt that the use of a dog with a stereotypical Mexican accent was problematic.
You're getting hungry.
As it seemed to reinforce negative cultural stereotypes. Latino civil rights leader Mario G. Obledo called for a boycott of the restaurant if the ads weren't discontinued. Matters were made worse when one ad featured the dog dressed as Che Guevara, the famous Argentine Marxist revolutionary who remains a controversial figure to this day. While it was tongue-in-cheek humor, it struck some as insensitive rather than ironic. And then there was the lawsuit. Taco Bell became flame-embroiled in a bitter legal dispute over the creation of its famous mascot.
You can't handle the truth!
According to the Seattle Times, dispute over the rights to market the sassy Chihuahua began in 1998, when Joseph Shields and Thomas Rinks of Grand Rapids, Michigan, filed suit claiming breach of contract. In the suit, Shields and Rinks alleged that they had developed a psycho Chihuahua cartoon character and had met with Taco Bell's advertising team to potentially use the character in a series of commercials, when the fast food giant stole their concept and took it to another agency. In the world of advertising, the only thing worse than a deflating chalupa is a deflating paycheck. Taco Bell wound up on the losing end of this particular court battle and was forced to hard shell out millions of dollars in damages. This is the part where fast food meets existentialism. You can sell the funniest commercials in the world, but if it doesn't result in a surging customer base suddenly demanding chalupas like they're going out of style, the marketing department starts to get a little sweaty. Despite the Chihuahua's runaway popularity, the sassy little pup didn't translate into increased sales for Taco Bell. Taco neck syndrome had struck once again. By 2000, Taco Bell pulled the plug on the campaign, citing everything from the allegations of racism, to the lawsuit, to the disappointing sales numbers. Godzilla tanking at the box office like he ate too many party packs probably didn't help much either.
Godzilla, want something to drink?
Despite what some internet rumors claim, the campaign was not retired because Gidget the dog passed away, although that would have added yet another layer to this 7-layer tragedy burrito. Gidget lived on, refusing to let the Taco Bell fiasco derail her dreams of stardom. She continued to make sporadic appearances in pop culture, including more commercials and a brief but memorable role in Legally Blonde 2. Eventually, she passed away in 2009 at the ripe old age of 15, finishing out with a longer and more successful career than most human actors. While the ultimate reason why Taco Bell retired the Chihuahua that laid the golden gordita is still a matter of debate, it seems like it was more of a perfect storm of bad publicity and mediocre sales than any single factor. Also, there are only so many catchphrases a character can spew at an audience before they are simply exhausted. So what does a fast food empire do after retiring its most iconic mascot? Apparently, they turned their attention to space. Yes, Taco Bell's next big marketing stunt came in 2001, when the chain promised free tacos to everyone in America if the Russian Mir space station landed on a giant target Taco Bell had set up in the Pacific Ocean. This, if you think about it, was Taco Bell's advertising department fully embracing the absurd. No little dog demanding tacos this time. We're aiming for the stars. As you might expect, the Mir space station did not land on the target, so no one won any tacos at all. This was probably what Taco Bell had in mind all along, as the odds of Mir landing in that exact spot were pretty astronomical.
Give it a wild guess.
1 in a million.
If you'll forgive the pun.
The odds are about 1 in 7.5 billion.
And no economy in the world could handle the sudden influx of taco demand that would have followed a successful space target landing. But in the spirit of the Liberty Bell stunt, it got everyone talking about Taco Bell. Today, Taco Bell continues to evolve, leaving behind mascots and focusing more on cultivating its brand through viral marketing, social media campaigns, and high-profile menu items. But for many, the Taco Bell Chihuahua remains the pinnacle of fast food marketing.
Yo quiero Taco Bell.
It was a character that transcended the product and created a catchphrase that still lingers in the collective consciousness of a generation, like the "Where's the Beef" lady before it.
Where's the beef?
Or Ernest P. Worrell. In the end, the Taco Bell Chihuahua didn't fail because it wasn't loved. It failed because, in a way, it was too successful. He became a pop culture icon, bigger than the tacos he was meant to promote. But people loved the dog, not necessarily the chalupa it was selling. And while the Chihuahua may not be as recognized today as other fast food characters, like the Hamburglar and whatever Grimace is supposed to be, its many catchphrases are forever etched into the minds of anyone who was lucky enough to witness the rise and fall of one of the weirdest, most beloved mascots in history.
Yo quiero Taco Bell.
The Olive Garden. When you're here, you're family.
When you hear those simple words, you've either walked onto your own episode of Intervention,
Oh my
or you've entered one of America's most beloved Italian restaurant chains. Olive Garden found its way into people's hearts and stomachs thanks to its signature decor and unlimited piles of soup, salad, and breadsticks. But how did the home of the never-ending pasta bowl get its start? Today, we're carb-loading the history of Olive Garden. Okay, time to load up on some carbs. Way back in the 1960s and 70s, General Mills was looking to break away from their wheaty-filled past and to make their way into all sorts of other industries. They bought up both Rainbow Crafts, the makers of Play-Doh, along with Kenner Products, the toy company that would go on to make all of the original Star Wars and Jurassic Park toys.
Fire the net!
Those were some pretty good moves. Having already explored aeronautics throughout the 1950s, there seemed to be only one place left for General Mills to turn: the restaurant industry. It started with Red Lobster, a restaurant that first opened its doors in 1968, grew to 5 locations in the 2 years that followed, and was bought up by General Mills in 1970, the year of the lobster. General Mills found quick success with Red Lobster, and by the 1980s, they'd managed to grow it into a nationwide shrimp-slinging enterprise. They naturally hoped to replicate Red Lobster's nationwide success, and so they devised an all-new restaurant to tap into the Italian food market: Olive Garden, or the Olive Garden, if you're fancy. So from its inception, Olive Garden was designed to be anywhere and everywhere. Not a mom-and-pop eatery, but a sprawling franchise meant to spread its pasta and breadsticks all across the nation. Between 1982, the year the world's first ever Olive Garden opened its doors in Orlando, Florida, and the end of the 1980s, General Mills had established 145 locations across America. Olive Garden's success grew to rival that of its crustacean-loving sister company. At the time, Olive Garden was officially called the Olive Garden, a name the chain would stick with for a whole 13 years. Likewise, its slogan was, "Good times, great salad. Olive Garden." Not as much fun as Red Lobster's seafood differently. But hey, it got the point across. Because back then, Olive Garden hadn't yet wowed the world with its unlimited breadsticks or never-ending pasta. Instead, they relied entirely on their bottomless salads to lure customers in. When the company first launched in 1982, its logo featured a simple yet elegant cursive rendition of the restaurant's name. It also adopted a Tuscan style for its architecture, a common practice among upscale Italian eateries of the time, all of whom were trying to distinguish themselves from the red and white tablecloths of a typical Italian joint.
Good flavor, it's not bland. It's a really neat environment, and their food and spaghetti is excellent.
These restaurants branded themselves as places where authentic Italian food could be had, free of heavy pizzas and pastas, and instead filled with seafood, vegetables, and grains. The Olive Garden did not go so far as to adopt a more authentic menu. In fact, they serve some of the heaviest pastas human eyes have ever seen. But in 1989, they decided to pull away from the salad thing and stamped Italian restaurant in the logo. Maybe too many people thought the Olive Garden was a wedding venue or something. Technically, it still could be, for some lucky girl. In 1995, General Mills spun off its entire restaurant division in order to create a standalone, publicly traded company. They called it Darden Restaurants, in honor of Bill Darden, the original founder of Red Lobster, who had passed away just 1 year prior. Hopefully, he got to eat one last cheddar biscuit before he checked out. But as restaurant revenue fell in the latter half of the 90s, Darden had to get its act together quickly if the company wanted to show it could make it on its own. So in 1998, Olive Garden got a makeover. In a move that would later inspire Mark Zuckerberg, the restaurant dropped the "the" from its name, becoming known simply as Olive Garden. The company changed its logo to include a bunch of grapes, and it changed its slogan to
When you're here, you're family.
a gentle hug of a catchphrase that you likely have memorized if you watched TV in the 90s. All the while, they updated their restaurants to look more rustic, even going so far as to model their tables after ones found in Florentine farmhouses. Along with these changes, Olive Garden introduced unlimited soups and, more importantly, unlimited breadsticks. The world would never be the same. These breadsticks alone may have saved Darden from the brink, as customers began to flock to Olive Garden en masse just to stuff themselves with grissini-inspired appetizers. In 1999, the company tried to boost its image by opening up its Culinary Institute of Italy, a facility that sent chefs and managers to Tuscany in order to train them in the art of true hospitaliano. While some online have claimed the Culinary Institute didn't actually teach employees a thing about Italian cooking, and that it instead served more as a photo op for Olive Garden's corporate side, the company still sent over 100 lucky employees there every year while in operation. While there, these employees apparently spent most of their time soaking up the Tuscan sun with an all-expense-paid vacation. Sure, there were a few short classes sprinkled into the mix, including a class on how olive oil gets pressed and one on the proper way to layer bolognese sauce. But it allegedly wasn't the intensive boot camp Olive Garden made it out to be. This eventually led to public backlash, as many people who had bought up the authentic Tuscan marketing felt misled. Just bring out another round of breadsticks and everyone will forget about it. In the new millennium, Olive Garden continued to find success, even as other competitors rose up to try and take its pasta crown. Both Bravo Italian Kitchen and Buca di Beppo, two companies that formed in the early 90s, grew into viable competitors during this time, and they began to make inroads into Olive Garden's Italian-American market share as the aughts wore on. It seemed not even a glowing viral review from Marilyn Haggerty with the Grand Forks Herald could turn things around.
I also said there's a bar to the right so people know that they could go in and have a drink.
Do you like to go to the bar while you wait?
Oh, I wouldn't mind at all.
By 2012, Darden investors were growing worried about their bottom line, and they wanted to make changes. It was at this time that Olive Garden's slogan changed to, "We're all family here." And then President Dave George went on Late Night with Jimmy Fallon to sign the rights of "When you're here, you're family" over to the TV talk show host, despite Fallon claiming to have never been to an actual Olive Garden location.
Let me be the first to say this. When you're here, you're family.
That gift was wasted on him. Olive Garden then ran their first ever never-ending pasta promotion. Starting at just $9.99, customers could eat all the pasta they wanted, which totaled for the restaurant chain a whopping 13 million bowls of pasta over the course of the promotion. The following year, Olive Garden then introduced the Never-Ending Pasta Pass, which, for just $99, allowed 1,000 lucky customers 7 whole weeks of all-you-can-eat pasta. They managed to keep both of these promotions profitable by loading customers up on breadsticks and salad first, before bringing out the first bowl of pasta. All subsequent bowls of pasta were then smaller in size, encouraging customers to slow their roll. The promotion was so successful that they continued to bring it back year after year. In 2017, for instance, the company listed 22,000 passes online at $100 apiece, all of which sold out in less than 1 second. In 2019, they also offered 50 $500 lifetime pasta passes that promised 1 bowl a day for the next 60 years, at less than 3 cents a pop.
Here's to the beginning of endless.
But back in 2014, even with the launch of Never-Ending Pasta, things were still a bit rocky for Darden. After a few attempts at combining Red Lobster and Olive Garden locations into a single food hulk, like those Taco Bell Pizza Huts you sometimes see in the wild, the company decided to sell off Red Lobster entirely. They then focused their attention on Olive Garden. And a leaked 300-slide presentation revealed a litany of issues investors had with the way Olive Garden conducts its business. Many of the issues raised included critiques of Olive Garden's day-to-day business practices, including allegations that they overcook their pasta, criticisms over the lack of added salt in the company's pasta water, and outright attacks on the number of free breadsticks given out each and every year. They wouldn't dare. Many investors wanted to do away with the unlimited breadsticks altogether, but the pro-breadstick caucus held the line, and unlimited breadsticks managed to survive. Sort of. Today, Olive Garden has over 900 locations that span every single U.S. state, much of both North and South America, and parts of both East Asia and the Middle East. While the exact number of breadsticks served fluctuates year to year, the entire chain collectively serves well over 500 million breadsticks annually. Still, after the 2014 uproar among Olive Garden investors, servers are now apparently instructed to serve only one breadstick per person per table, plus one extra breadstick in a show of goodwill, like two nations negotiating peace. Though the breadsticks are still considered unlimited after this initial round, guests have to specifically request a refill if they want more bread brought to the table. Even with all that free bread, Olive Garden still has no issues making dough. Today, Olive Garden generates almost half of Darden Restaurant's $9.5 billion in yearly revenue. That means the Garden outsells Cheddar's, Yard House, and Longhorn Steakhouse combined. While many other chains around America have seen slowdowns in recent years, there seems to be one reason for Olive Garden's staying power. Millennials, known for having ditched chain restaurants in exchange for more unique local experiences, seem to have carved out a corporate-sized exception for Olive Garden. Millennials apparently love the place so much that about 30% of all Olive Garden patrons likewise come from Generation Y, overrepresenting their share of the U.S. population by a whole 6%. What's more, according to a 2023 study conducted by Yelp, Olive Garden is the most popular brand in America's most populated state, California. Wonder where Sparrow ranked. While the restaurant chain ended up ranking 15th nationwide, the Golden State just can't seem to get enough of its pasta-filled goodness. For those on the other coast, the best way to empty your wallet fast is with Olive Garden's Times Square New Year's Bash, a $400 celebration that features a buffet, 3 separate bars, a DJ, and an allegedly mediocre view of the annual ball drop. I mean, it is a giant ball. Is there a good view? Now, you may be asking yourself, whatever happened to "when you're here, your family"? After holding onto the slogan for half a decade, Jimmy Fallon finally sat down in an Olive Garden for the first time ever with known Olive Garden connoisseur Post Malone. During this dinner, Fallon surprised Post Malone by gifting him the rights to the slogan, a move we can only hope will lead to every future Post Malone video inexplicably taking place in an Olive Garden.
It's done. That's it. How great is that?
Growing up in the 1990s meant surfing the internet on those AOL discs, watching The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Saved by the Bell, and playing GoldenEye on the Nintendo 64. And when it came to snacking, it meant having some of the greatest choices ever known to human children, if, that is, you could convince your parents to buy them. So today, we're unwrapping some 90s snack foods we want back. Okay, somebody throw on some Oasis. Released in 1990, Nestle's Push-Up Pops were basically just sherbet in a cardboard tube that came equipped with something akin to a built-in plunger, which was used to push the sherbet up. And they were yabba-dabba delicious, by which we mean they were bedazzled with Flintstones characters. Flintstones Push-Ups seemed to disappear from the shelves at the end of the decade, but in reality, Nestle had simply ended its branding deal with the cartoon's producers. Push-Ups are actually still out there in your grocer's freezer, just without Fred's smiling face on them. First released in 1988, Hubba Bubba Bubble Tape, a variation on the Hubba Bubba gum brand, exploded in the 1990s. Not literally. It just got really popular. Apparently, kids were really into measuring things. But whatever the reason, the popularity of Bubble Tape was probably more related to its famous marketing campaign, which told kids,
It's 6 feet of bubble gum for you, not them.
Them, in this case, is meant to refer to adults. So the slogan was basically saying, this gum is gonna piss off your parents. It worked like the Pied Piper's flute, and the manufacturer found themselves making 1 million packages of the stuff a week at the height of its popularity. Although the idea of so-called fruit leather actually goes back at least back to the turn of the 20th century, General Mills didn't introduce the world to fruit roll-ups until 1983. Once they did though, the snack, which was basically just fruit-flavored corn syrup dried in a flat circular shape on a piece of cellophane, could quickly be found in almost every supermarket in America. For a brief time between 1994 and 1996, General Mills partnered up with Nickelodeon to make fruit roll-ups that were branded with animated characters from shows like Doug, Rocko's Modern Life, and Real Monsters. There was even a limited edition slimy, grimy green flavor celebrating the network's infamous green slime. The end result looked like chowing down on a square of Shrek's pelt. Who wouldn't want to eat that? Manufactured by the Topps Company, who have primarily made baseball cards packaged with inedible gum for most of human history, Push Pops were a staple snack of 90s kids. Housed in a plastic tube that had a plunger-like device allowing consumers to push the treat up as they ate it, Push Pops were fairly similar to Nestle's Push-Ups, Although Tops apparently couldn't snag an endorsement from Fred Flintstone. But if Push Pops were your jam, we're happy to report you can still get them in many of their classic flavors. The hyperactive brainchild of General Mills, Squeeze-Its were a juice-like drink that came in a plastic bottle, and in order to drink it, you had to, well, squeeze it. Although they were actually introduced in the 1980s, Squeeze-Its rose to popularity in the 90s, thanks to a weird series of commercials in which kids chase down terrified, anthropomorphized Squeeze-It bottles to drink their delicious innards. The commercial ends with the encouraging slogan, "Squeeze the fun out of it," which presumably hit the ears of every Squeeze-It bottle like a terrifying prophecy. Squeeze-Its came in flavors like Chucklin' Cherry, Rockin' Red Puncher, and Smarty Arty Orange, but the big squeeze came to an end when they were discontinued in 1991. Brought to you by the same people who brought you Fruit Roll-Ups, Shark Bites first swam onto supermarket shelves in 1988. Shark Bites were famous for their so-called special pieces. Some packages included rare alternate shapes like great whites, shark's teeth, or tiger sharks. Because it's never too early to start teaching kids about gambling. The whole thing worked so well, the company released a companion snack called Berry Bears, aimed at girls who, for some reason, they assumed didn't like sharks. Shark Bites are still out there today, but ye be warned, their flavors are vastly different. Hubba Bubba Ouch bubblegum was sold in tin containers that were made to resemble Band-Aid boxes, for that weird kid in class who liked to eat Band-Aids. Also, each individual stick of gum was wrapped in paper, like a Band-Aid, to complete the illusion. And like actual Band-Aids, the gum was sugar-free, but unlike actual Band-Aids, it came in flavors like grape, watermelon, sugar, and bubble. If this was one of your favorites, however, we're sorry to report the bizarre gum was discontinued in the late 2000s. Lunchables were brought to you by Oscar Mayer, the first and last name in bologna, and first hit supermarket shelves in 1988, going nationwide in 1989. Conceived as a way to sell more bologna and marketed as a way to help moms save time making lunch, Lunchables were a massive hit. They sold over 1.5 billion units in their first decade and proliferated into a variety of flavors, including the now legendary pizza. Introduced in '96, pizza Lunchables were little snack packs that came with a small piece of crust, some sugary tomato sauce, 3 slices of pepperoni, some mozzarella cheese, and a cool red wand to spread the sauce. The wand is long gone, but otherwise, pizza Lunchables are still available. Though they were created in Taiwan as early as 1975, Warheads weren't imported to the United States until 1993. It makes sense that the candy king of schoolyard legend would have a vague backstory like Rambo. Flavored with citric and malic acid, they have a pronounced sour taste. The flavor's intensity fades after 5 to 10 seconds, but most people had already spat them out by then. Despite, or more likely because of, a warning on the package that read, "Eating multiple pieces within a short time period may cause a temporary irritation to sensitive tongues and mouths." 90s kids would often hold contests to see who could eat the most Warheads at once. If you were one of those kids, we recommend getting back in fighting shape, because Warheads are still around today. Debuting on supermarket shelves in 1990, Kid Cuisine was a line of frozen dinners made exclusively for kids, which you could instantly tell because there was a cool-ass penguin wearing sunglasses right on the front of every package. The idea was basically to combine frozen foods and McDonald's Happy Meals for a Voltron of nutrition aimed squarely at latchkey kids. The TV dinner-like meals usually came with portions of kid-friendly meals like chicken nuggets and mac and cheese, and as the brand became more popular, new varieties like Pizza Painter Cheese Pizza and Rock and Roll Taco Roll-Ups were released. However, today you can only get 3 kinds: popcorn chicken, mini corn dogs, and all-star nuggets. They all come with a brownie, corn and fries, or mac and cheese, if you're looking to recreate a weekday afternoon in the 90s. Kids like to play with their food. It's one of the immutable laws of the universe put forth by Isaac Newton. General Mills sought to capitalize on that universal truth by releasing Fruit String Thing, which comes from the same general Fruit Goop family of snack foods that include Fruit Roll-Ups and Shark Bites. This time, the mixture was poured onto a paper backing in ropey tangles and swirls that kids could peel off the card as a single long strand or in bits and pieces. In fact, commercials for String Thing emphasize the creativity inherent in choosing how to eat one. While the standard form resembled string, the product also came in designs like rocket ships and bicycles, for kids with less imagination. But to the disappointment of kids everywhere, the product was discontinued sometime in the mid-2000s. Nestle's Butterfinger is a chocolate bar with a weird, flaky orange, peanut butter flavored filling that, believe it or not, has been around since 1922. When a product is a 70-year bestseller, you don't mess with the recipe, but you do try a spin-off. So in 1992, Nestle rolled out Butterfinger BBs. Introduced to the world through a high-profile advertising blitz starring The Simpsons, Butterfinger BBs were marble-sized nuggets of chocolate and peanut butter, presumably created to answer the question, what if Butterfingers were more of a choking hazard? The candy had a good run, but was discontinued in 2006, at which point we assume Bart finally had that cow. Nobody likes a flat Dorito. That's apparently what the brand was thinking when Doritos 3D debuted in 1998. Likely created to compete with snacks like Bugles, this version of the popular tortilla chip was basically just a puffed-up Dorito, like it had an allergic reaction to nacho cheese. It came in 3 flavors, including Zesty Ranch, Jalapeno Cheddar, and the old Doritos mainstay, Nacho Cheese. The line was discontinued pretty much everywhere but Mexico in 2004. But if you're one of the people who just can't stand 2D Doritos, take heart. In 2021, the company brought the 3D version back in 2 flavors, chili cheese nacho and spicy ranch. Nestle's Bug Pops, popsicles with little gummy bugs in them, were created as a tie-in to the animated cartoon Timon and Pumbaa, which starred the characters from Disney's 1994 animated classic, The Lion King, who were known to eat bugs. Despite looking for all the world like popsicles that had fallen under the refrigerator, the Bug Pops took off in 1995. They were available in cherry and grape, and each box typically included some Timon and Pumbaa trading cards. Like the cartoon they were affiliated with, however, the product was relatively short-lived, disappearing from the shelves in 1997. Dropping in the mid-1990s, Sprinkle Spangle cereal from General Mills was star-shaped cereal covered in colorful sprinkles. Commercials for the product featured a purple genie character called Sprinkle Genie, who was voiced by Mel Brooks' mainstay Dom DeLuise. The character would show up to grant the wishes of kids who wanted sprinkles on their cereal with the catchphrase, "You wish it, I dish it," while the commercial itself bragged that the makers had spangled every angle with sprinkles. Despite all the rhymes, the brand was discontinued in 1998, never to be seen again. Sonic the Hedgehog made his debut on Sega gaming systems in 1991. By 1995, the character was famous enough to receive the highest award American culture has to offer, his own brand of canned spaghetti and meatballs. Sonic the Hedgehog pasta was manufactured by Franco-American, the maker of SpaghettiOs, who marketed the brand with a bizarre commercial that depicted a Robotnik-like kid plugging a can of pasta into his gaming system. Sonic himself would go on to fame and fortune in the movies, but his branded pasta hit the wall in 2000.
Unless you've been living on Mars, odds are you've heard the phrase,
"Step into a Slim Jim."
Probably from a professional wrestler. Slim Jims are a meat snack that is similar to, but legally distinct from beef jerky. And in the 1990s, they were everywhere. But all of a sudden, this once dominant salty treat seemingly blinked out of existence, as if Thanos snapped into one. So what happened? Today, we're getting the skinny on why we stopped snapping into Slim Jims. Okay, I've got to be a macho man. Macho, macho, macho man, yeah, macho. You get the idea. Disappointing though it may be, the Slim Jim was not invented by a slim guy named Jim. In fact, the inventor's name was actually Adolf, and we have no idea what his physique was like at the time. That time, incidentally, would be 1929. The US was experiencing a minor economic hiccup that would come to be known as the Great Depression. So a 16-year-old Adolf Levis dropped out of his Philadelphia school to help earn money for his family. Young Adolf was clearly a self-starter, and he quickly established a business supplying local delis and bars with things like condiments, cabbages, relishes, and various pickled meats, which is pretty impressive for a teenager. After a while, he noticed that his runaway bestseller was pepperoni. Bar owners were selling slices to patrons as a snack food, and young Adolf found he could barely restock them fast enough. Already a pretty keen businessman, he sensed there was more money to be made. But pepperoni, as a product, had a few major drawbacks. For starters, pepperoni logs take a long time to cure. They're also fairly large and unwieldy, making them difficult to cut and messy to hold, not to mention all the real estate they sucked up on the bar. To address these problems, Levis brought on his brother-in-law, Joseph Cherry, as a partner, and the two hired a meat packer to bring their vision to life. That vision was of a slim, spicy stick of dried meat, which would cure much faster than ordinary pepperoni. These meat sticks could then be distributed to bars, which would store them in jars of vinegar behind the counter to keep them fresh. Those bars advertised the sticks with the slogan, "Less than a meal and more than a snack," which is actually pretty catchy. But what wasn't catchy was the name that Levis and Cherry gave their product, Penrose. The pen was for Pennsylvania and the rose was named for Levis's first wife, but customers didn't much care for his sentimentality and the name never caught on. The product would need a new name, and Levis insisted on something that sounded mature and respectable. Somehow, that name turned out to be Slim Jim. Slim Jim sounded classy to Levis because he associated the word slim with Virginia Slim cigarettes, which was marketed as a sophisticated brand at the time. He even came up with a cartoon mascot wearing a tux and top hat. The new name caught on, and their manufacturer, Cherry Levis Food Products, became a success. They kept on making snack foods into the 1950s, when they started individually wrapping Slim Jims in cellophane, which made them much easier to transport and store. The change also meant Slim Jims could be sold in grocery and convenience stores, no jar of vinegar required. The new markets kicked the business into overdrive and eventually drew the attention of food manufacturing giant General Mills, who bought out the company in 1967 and moved the whole operation to North Carolina. And for the next 15 years, all Slim Jims would be produced at that North Carolina plant. But in 1982, General Mills sold the brand to a coalition of executives. Long story short, those new owners drastically changed the recipe, which is why the Slim Jims of today are fairly different from the ones Levis and Cherry sold. So if you thought you were tasting 100 years of spiced meat perfection, sadly it's only about half that, which is still some beefy history. After that, Slim Jims changed hands a few more times, and today they're owned by Conagra Brands. If you're not familiar with that name, they're behind pretty much everything you'll find at your local supermarket, including brands like Bird's Eye, Swanson, Healthy Choice, Vlasic, Jiffy Pop, Peter Pan Peanut Butter, and countless others. Slim Jims were already successful, but they didn't become the must-have snack of 90s kids until professional wrestler Macho Man Randy Savage growled out the catchphrase,
"You excitement? Step into a Slim Jim, oh yeah!"
Developed by ad men Tom Leland, Roger Martinson, and Hal Rosen of North Castle Partners, the campaign was originally designed for the comedian Sam Kinison, best known for rudely shouting his punchlines. Kinison, however, turned out not to be interested, so the group decided to go with a famous pro wrestler instead. But that wrestler wasn't Savage. It was James Bryan Hellwig, better known as the Ultimate Warrior. Hellwig signed on in 1991 and did a TV commercial and some radio spots for Slim Jim. But for reasons that have never been made public, in 1993 he was replaced by the Macho Man. The bizarre comedic tone of the commercials appealed to viewers and increased both the sales and popularity of Slim Jims, particularly among male teens and adolescents. Savage would stay on as the brand's spokesman until 2000 and has been practically synonymous with the brand's catchphrase ever since. He wasn't the only wrestler to get in on the action. Other ads for iconic meat sticks featured other WWE stars like Edge, Kevin Nash, and Bam Bam Bigelow, and more recently, Bianca Belair, Jey Uso, and LA Knight. Slim Jim even tried some ads with Vanilla Ice. After all, who wouldn't want snacking advice from a guy named after dessert? Of course, nothing lasts forever, and that includes the Snap Into a Slim Jim campaign. After they felt that the slogan had run its course, Slim Jim tried to strike gold again with a number of other irreverent marketing hooks. One of those was a series of commercials featuring actor Dimitri Garitsis as an anthropomorphic Slim Jim called Slim Jim Guy, who would terrorize hungry bystanders by shouting the catchphrase, "Eat me!
Eat me!"
Another featured a character called the Fairy Snapmother, who according to the company resembled a tattooed rocker with wings, which they felt was a familiar MTV type of humor young males enjoy. And yet another campaign featured the Snapalope, which was a puppet made of Slim Jims vaguely resembling a deer. It was weird. The Slim Jim Guy even managed to show up as a playable character in the 2001 PlayStation 2 game Dave Mirra's Freestyle BMX 2, as a testament to the snack's appeal to teens and adolescents. But none of these efforts came close to the popularity of the Macho Man commercials. The end of the wildly successful Snap Into a Slim Jim campaign wasn't the only problem the company had to deal with. Over the years, consumers had become increasingly health conscious, and as you might have guessed, processed snack foods like Slim Jims aren't exactly what you might call healthy. As a hedge against changing habits, Slim Jim made several attempts to branch out over the years, to varying degrees of success. One such spin-off product is the Slim Jim Premium, which the company has boasted is made from healthier ingredients, like premium pork and grass-fed beef. They come in flavors like Original Smokehouse, Spicy Chili and Garlic, and Memphis-style Barbecue, described as a meat snack that appeals to a slightly older male consumer. So this one will presumably be a playable character in a golfing video game. The company also unleashed a tidal wave of new Slim Jim flavors, including Tabasco, Nacho, Dill Pickle, Savage Spicy, Sonic Chili Cheese Coney, Teriyaki, Honey Barbecue, and a whole bunch more in an effort to stay fresh. But changing tastes and an increasingly competitive snack market weren't the end of Slim Jim's troubles. Remember that plant in North Carolina where all those Slim Jim products are made? Well, on June 9th, 2009, it was the site of a devastating natural gas explosion. The accident devastated 100,000 square feet of the factory and also damaged the plant's refrigeration system, releasing tens of thousands of gallons of ammonia. 4 workers were killed and over 70 others were injured. The plant would then be closed for 6 weeks, and even when it reopened, it was only able to operate at half its former capacity. ConAgra ultimately made the decision to shutter the facility on May 20th, 2011. Ironically enough, the same day Randy Macho Man Savage shuffled off this mortal coil and headed off to that great wrestling match in the sky. So, that was a real tough day for Slim Jim fans. The brand certainly faced its share of trouble, but like a Slim Jim, the arc of history is long and spicy. In recent years, the iconic meat snack seems to be making something of a comeback. In fact, Slim Jims are arguably more popular than ever. ConAgra currently makes over 1 billion of them every year to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars in profit. And in 2023, Slim Jim renewed its relationship with the WWE by signing up for the largest sponsorship in the league's history. They then kicked that relationship off by sponsoring a 20-man battle royale at that year's SummerSlam. What is it with wrestlers and cured meat sticks? Slim Jim has also become the focus of an internet fan club called the Long Boy Gang, which boasts over 1 million members. The group was the brainchild of a New York advertising agency determined to keep the company's marketing youth-focused by focusing their efforts on social media. And it seems to have worked. According to the packaging, Slim Jims are officially meat snacks, or smoked snack sticks. And if that sounds ominous, you'd better use one to plug your ears. Slim Jim meat sticks do actually contain real meat. That being said, it's not the highest quality of meat. The meat you'll find in a Slim Jim is typically the cheapest chicken, pork, and beef the company can find, and they are very good at finding it. And then there are the additives. Those include things like soy, corn, and wheat, which give the stick a savory umami taste. After that, there's a boatload of salt and something called sodium nitrate, which prevents the Slim Jim's red color from fading to an unsettling dead ET gray while it's in the packaging. Sprinkle in some lactic acid and dextrose to kill bacteria, and bam, you've got yourself a Slim Jim. In other words, a Slim Jim is sort of like a sausage made from a slurry of different meats. Unfortunately, while they're just as delicious, maybe even more so depending on how drunk you are, Slim Jims are much more unhealthy than your average sausage. In fact, at least one medical professional recommended avoiding them completely, unless you're trapped miles away from civilization and have no other options to feed yourself while awaiting rescue. But that probably didn't change anyone's minds about them, because they're just too dang tasty. The basic process of creating a Slim Jim isn't really much different from making a sausage. A food so acceptable, it comes on pizzas and McMuffins. And there's no way anyone will get as hype as the Macho Man by eating just one species of animal at a time. That's why he and John Madden invented the turducken. Citation needed. In other words, part of the reason Slim Jims have had such a long shelf life is that they aren't anything more than they claim to be. A delicious spiced snack stick of various meats sent to brighten your afternoon, or ride a BMX in your favorite video game.
Despite what the brochure you got from that animatronic monkey may have told you, themed restaurants were not invented by Rainforest Cafe in the 1990s. People have been throwing down cash at novelty eateries since the 1930s, but the 90s experienced a boom in gimmicky chow houses, the likes of which hasn't been the same since. So today, we're going to take a look at the craziest themed restaurants from the 90s. Okay, time to get thematic. If there's one thing Hollywood does better than anyone, it's endlessly recycling profitable ideas until people lose interest in them. And the idea for Planet Hollywood did come from a movie producer. His name was Keith Barish, and his basic pitch was to do a version of the Hard Rock Cafe for movie fans. The Hard Rock's owner, Robert Earl, loved the idea, and he reasoned that movie stars could be persuaded to help promote the chain through a deal by which they would receive a portion of ownership in exchange for appearing at restaurant openings staged to look like film premieres. And he was right. Who wouldn't want to walk the red carpet with a basket of chicken tenders named after a Schwarzenegger movie, Predator? In 1991, Planet Hollywood opened its doors in New York City with the backing of major movie stars Arnold Schwarzenegger, Bruce Willis, and Sylvester Stallone. As envisioned, it was a movie premiere-style spectacle with the marquee backers and other celebrities in attendance.
Well, it's kind of like a party at my place on a Friday night, except I don't have the celebrities or the carpet or Elton John doesn't sing, but other than that, it's pretty much the same.
Things went well for a while, and Planet Hollywood grew to over 100 locations, but the chain wouldn't prove to have the staying power of the Hard Rock. Planet Hollywood started losing money quickly. After its first Las Vegas casino venture failed, stocks fell, and the celebrity backers began jumping ship. As of 2023, there are just 6 restaurants and 5 Planet Hollywood branded hotels still operating. Huh, small world. In the world of wrestling, there's nothing bigger than the WWE, which back in the 1990s, prior to some legal action by the World Wildlife Fund, was still called the WWF. Presumably, there was some confusion when people in denim vests kept showing up to wildlife fundraisers and suplexing the pandas. In 1999, WWF chairman Vince McMahon opened the first and what would ultimately be only location in the Paramount Theater in New York's Times Square. The place was a combination restaurant, nightclub, and souvenir shop that even had a barricaded cage room where hopefully you'd be allowed to challenge your server to a test of strength to earn their tip. Pay-per-view events were broadcast directly from the restaurant itself, and shows like Monday Night Raw would often use the location in various segments. And the dishes were all themed around wrestlers. So, like macho nachos and a Hulk hoagie, I guess. No, wait, Hogan's should be a hot dog. The place even turned up in WWF video games. In 2002, when the WWF became the WWE, the restaurant was renamed The World. Apparently, the concept of wrestling had also sued Vince McMahon, but the rebrand didn't last long. The WWE decided to get out of the restaurant business, and the New York location closed in 2003. If iconic film director Steven Spielberg were to open a themed restaurant, what do you think the theme would be? One of his blockbuster movies, perhaps? Nope, the answer was submarines. Come on, guys, Jaws. It was right there. Built like a giant yellow submarine and hosting a nautical theme, diners at the restaurant called Dive were given the illusion that they were eating deep under the sea, like the people trapped in the galley on the Titanic.
Food is really different, the decor is terrific.
According to the restaurant's advertising, patrons were invited to enjoy sublime food in a playful, submerged environment with bubbling porthole windows, gauges, an underwater video voyage, and working periscope with panoramic city views. In case you couldn't tell, the place was submarine-themed. And it was all Spielberg's idea, apparently inspired by his little-known love of the sea and underwater exploration. He and producing partner Jeffrey Katzenberg, who later teamed up with Spielberg to create DreamWorks, devised the plan for Dive in 1993. The restaurant's first location opened in Los Angeles in 1994. As advertised, the restaurant was bedecked in nautical finery, and every 45 minutes, there was a 30-second submerging of the submarine-shaped eatery. The portholes bubbled over, lights flashed, and submarine moans and groans filled the dining room. Because nothing makes a meal more unforgettable than the simulated threat of violent implosion. Despite being a well-known hangout for celebrities, the original LA site closed in 1999. And while steady souvenir sales kept a second location in Las Vegas open a little longer, it finally closed in the early 2000s.
All three of us have Jewish mothers that says it's good to have a little something on the side.
Except my mother saw Dive, and her first comment was, "That's the biggest piece of trafe I've ever seen."
The first American Girl Cafe opened in 1998 at the American Girl Place store in Chicago. Billed as doll-friendly dining, the eateries were designed as a way to make a trip to an American Girl store an even more memorable outing. Or at least, to keep kids there a little longer so that they might annoy their parents into buying more doll accessories. The eateries in New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago are large, somewhat frilly affairs, while other locations are known as bistros and are significantly smaller. And while not all American Girl stores have a cafe, all of the American Girl cafes have special seats for diners' dolls to join them at the table. And if you don't have your own doll to bring with you, don't worry. Diners are offered the chance to borrow one if they so desire. Man, is there any part of this experience that doesn't sound like a saw trap? Ever wish you could eat dinner on Mars? In the year 2112 specifically? Well, back in 1998, a guy named Pascal M. Phelan had that same dream, but instead of whining about it like you, he opened Mars 2112. The restaurant's theme was space travel, and diners ate amongst alien and spaceship decor, like an indoor kid's bedroom. The elevator looked like a UFO, the dishes all had space-related names, and the employees all wore futuristic regalia.
I know I was awfully nervous the first time I met interstellar royalty.
Phelan described the place as a fusion of fun and good food and fantasy, which honestly doesn't sound so bad, but it does sound like a lot of work for a hamburger. When the New York City location opened in Times Square in November of 1998, it was the largest themed restaurant in the world, standing 3 stories tall. In 2000, a second location opened in a mall in Schaumburg, Illinois, because as the famous song about New York goes, if you can make it there, you can make it in Schaumburg, Illinois. Mars 2112 struggled to make ends meet and actually filed for bankruptcy twice. After an incident in 2011 where the New York location famously refused to let Shaquille O'Neal in because he wasn't dressed properly, things got dicey. How could you not be dressed properly for the space diner? Did they want him to wear a helmet? And while the Shaq debacle may not be the direct cause, the Times Square site, and the franchise with it, closed in 2012. Founded by Mort Bank, who previously operated several themed McDonald's. Wait, you can own a themed McDonald's? The first Space Aliens Grill and Bar opened in Bismarck, North Dakota in 1997, before expanding into a handful of other locations. There's still one open in Fargo. Yep, Fargo. The restaurants are decorated with alien-themed furnishings, have large dome ceilings painted to look like outer space, and include plenty of space-centric games for kids. The dining areas, which have names like the Bar for Mars and Area 51, serve American food. Most popular item on the menu are fire-roasted pizza and barbecued ribs, just like Mom made back at home planet Zebulon. There's plenty of Space Aliens merchandise if you want something to take home with you, including Space Aliens clothing, beverage containers, spices, and sauces. Today, Space Aliens Grill and Bar continues to go where few themed restaurants of the 90s have gone before, into sustained profitability. Remember Robert Earl? He was the owner of the Hard Rock Cafe and one of the people behind Planet Hollywood. Well, he was also responsible for the official All-Star Cafe, a chain of theme restaurants celebrating the worldwide of sports. This man caused incalculable damage to the mozzarella stick community. After the initial success of Planet Hollywood, Earl saw an opportunity to capitalize on the most American of all pastimes. And like the movie stars of Planet Hollywood, he enlisted celebrity athletes like Andre Agassi, Wayne Gretzky, Ken Griffey Jr., Shaquille O'Neal, Joe Montana, and Monica Seles to invest in the business. The first official All-Star Cafe, which served traditional sports food, opened in New York City in 1995. The walls were adorned with such iconic pieces of sports memorabilia as Agassi's ponytail and the first backboard O'Neal ever smashed. And the booths resembled oversized baseball gloves. The ground floor of the New York City location was a 5,000 square foot gift shop because you're not really a success unless you're selling t-shirts. In 1999, the cafe's parent company filed for bankruptcy and locations began closing. The last location, at Disney's Wide World of Sports, closed its doors in September of 2007. And that was game over for the official All-Star Cafe. Rainforest Cafe is a place that gives diners a unique experience of dining in a tropical rainforest. You know, if tropical rainforests were Chuck E. Cheese's for adults in the middle of a shopping mall. The first Rainforest Cafe opened in Minnesota's Mall of America in February 1994. Decked out with foliage, animal figures, mist, and waterfalls, the restaurant features a menu of mostly Americanized food, despite the fact that the U.S. has no rainforests. Owner Steven Schuessler's concept for Rainforest Cafe actually first took shape as a result of his home makeover.
And I wanted to have cascading waterfalls, soothing mists. They said that it was absolutely impossible. So I decided to take it a little bit further. I transformed my St. Louis Park, Minnesota home into the Rainforest Cafe.
Listen, the guy was really into rainforests. According to his autobiography, his home contained 40 tropical birds, 250-pound tortoises, a baboon, an iguana, and a bevy of tropical fish housed in 10 300-gallon fish tanks. And just like Schuessler's house, the cafe contained live animals too. On a regular schedule throughout operating hours, mock thunderstorms broke out inside, the lights would dim, lightning would flash, thunder would roll, and the sound of falling rain was pumped through the sound system. People must have thought it was cool because within days, the wait for a table stretched as long as 3 hours. That's a long time to wait for airport-quality food served against the backdrop of animatronic gorillas. As of 2023, Rainforest Cafe still has 23 locations open around the globe. Merchandise is for sale at every store location, including stuffed animals, toys, dinnerware, and exotic finds, just like in the real rainforest. If you've ever wanted to eat waffle fries in the presence of supermodels, Fashion Cafe was the oasis you were searching for.
It's finally happening. Hollywood rarely gives us glamour, so why not? You know, we've got Planet Hollywood. Why not one for the girls?
The idea behind Fashion Cafe was similar to Planet Hollywood and the official All-Star Cafe, except instead of movie stars or athletes, supermodels promoted the restaurant. However, unlike those other enterprises, the models were not part owners, but paid spokespeople who would simply receive a portion of the eatery's future profits. But just like Planet Hollywood, the people promoting the joint wouldn't eat a single thing on the menu. The Fashion Cafe was actually the brainchild of Italian entrepreneurial brothers Francesco and Tommaso Butti. Tommaso came to New York City from Italy in 1989 and started making connections within the city's real estate and celebrity circles. Recognizing the sudden popularity of runway models, he joined forces with his brother to open the first location in Rockefeller Center in the spring of 1995. The gala opening of Fashion Cafe was set up like a red carpet, except instead of a blockbuster movie, it was a place that served pizza and hamburgers. Among the attendees were spokesmodels Christy Turlington, Naomi Campbell, Elle Macpherson, and Claudia Schiffer, as well as Gianna and Donatella Versace, David Copperfield, and Stephen Dorff. Wait, was he invited or did he just kind of show up? The restaurant was decorated with trendy outfits once worn by the most popular models of the day. And of course, Fashion Cafe sold plenty of branded merchandise. Despite some initial success, every Fashion Cafe location closed, and in 2000, the Butti brothers faced 51 federal counts each of conspiracy, fraud, and money laundering in their handling of Fashion Cafe's finances. But in 2021, Tommaso Butti was pardoned by President Donald Trump. Inspired by a company founded by the titular character in the movie Forrest Gump, the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company, which opened its first location in 1996 in Monterey, California, is a seafood restaurant featuring mostly Southern and Cajun dishes. Most of the dishes are named after characters from the popular 1994 film. People must love the Run Chicken Run salad because the chain sells roughly 1 million pounds of shrimp a year. What, no Lieutenant Dan cakes? That's just leaving money on the table. As of 2023, there are 34 locations in operation. Each is decorated with a nautical theme and memorabilia from the movie. Interestingly, actor Chris Pratt was discovered while waiting tables at a Bubba Gump Shrimp Company in Maui, Hawaii.
Gumper of the Year right here. Thank you.
Maybe they should have called that place Planet Hollywood. If you were a 90s kid, then odds are you've had a Lunchable or two in your day. The prepackaged snack food, which invites kids to assemble their own sorta meals from a variety of fun ingredients, was the lunchtime treat for a generation of kids. Whose parents believed they were providing a healthier option to processed junk food. But where did these mealtime miracles come from? And just how good for us were they? Well, today, we're assembling the stacked-up history of Lunchables. Okay, this one is full of baloney, but in a good way. Thanks to One Meat Processor, we all know our bologna has a first and last name. B-O-L-O-G-N-A. The Oscar Mayer jingle has become as much a part of American culture as the national anthem or the Pledge of Allegiance. But while people loved singing about the proper spelling of their bologna's name, by the 1980s, they weren't too high on bologna itself. Consumer habits were trending in the direction of healthier food, and bologna, as it turns out, is kind of terrible for you. Sales stagnated along with other lunch meats, and the marketing department at Oscar Mayer went to DEFCON 1. At the time, one of the company's new hires, Dr. Roddy Hawkins, was looking to make an impression. Inspired by the success of Kraft's Cheese and Crackers product, which came with a little plastic red wand that allowed consumers to spread the cheese on the crackers themselves, Hawkins proposed the concept for the product that would become Lunchables. Lunchables. But Hawkins was really just an idea man, so the concept was then developed by a team that included Bob Drain, Deborah Giarusso, Jeff James, and Tom Bailey. To stress that it was really a meal, the team decided to put the product in a tray that resembled a TV dinner. They kicked around quite a few names for their revolutionary new product, including mini meals, lunch kits, cracker witches, entrees, walk meals, go packs, square meals, fun meals with a Z, snackables, and, we kid you not, smoothie kebabbles. Despite the fact that smoothie kebabbles is objectively the best name, they went with Lunchables. What might have been? Given they were considering names like Fun Meals and Cracker Witches, you'd think Lunchables were to be squarely aimed at children. But you would be wrong. During development, focus groups revealed that Americans were working longer hours and were increasingly having trouble finding time to do things like make lunch for themselves. And to the folks at Oscar Mayer, the solution was Lunchables. But not surprisingly, hungry adults weren't super excited about building a series of tiny sandwiches on crackers. Children, on the other hand, were a different story. Turns out the youngins were actually pretty excited about the idea of assembling their own lunch sandwiches. Hey, kids like building things. Just look at how many parents Fortnite has bankrupted. Market research also showed that kids were much more likely to experiment with flavor variations, like the now famous pizza Lunchable.
Lunchables pizza. Finally, pizza!
As a bonus, research also showed that parents enjoyed giving Lunchables to their kids and thought of it like a present that could be delightfully unwrapped, a marketing angle the company would lean into in its product design. It was win-win-win for parents, kids, and the Oscar Mayer Corporation. And from there on out, Lunchables were for kids. Of course, adults scooping up the interactive lunchtime treat wasn't discouraged. According to the company, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1/4 to 1/3 of Lunchables are consumed by adults. Never underestimate the power of prepackaged meals. Also, nothing works up an appetite like assembling your meal like a pile of Legos. When Roddy Hawkins pitched his idea for Lunchables to the higher-ups at Oscar Mayer, he demonstrated his confidence in the proposed product by telling them they didn't even have to pay him a salary if they would just give him 1% of the money Lunchables was going to make. Hawkins was joking, but he probably wished he hadn't been after he saw exactly how much money Lunchables turned out to make. Lunchables were test marketed in Seattle, Washington in 1988, and those tests went so well, the product went national the following year. After that, they were an instant hit, selling over $200 million worth of product in just their first year on supermarket shelves. And things only got bigger from there. Research showed an astounding 50% of consumers that tried Lunchables came back for more. Even Hawkins was surprised, later reflecting, "I never dreamed it would be a big product line as it is today. I just knew it could be successfully done." It wouldn't be long until Lunchables were a ubiquitous sight in schools and on playgrounds across America. So, remember how the whole idea of Lunchables was to essentially trick people into buying unhealthy foods that weren't selling? Well, big surprise, but as a result, Lunchables weren't all that nutritious. And it wasn't just the bologna, which, incidentally, according to the USDA, isn't so much meat as it is a paste-like and batter-like poultry product produced by forcing bones with attached edible tissue through a sieve or similar device under high pressure to separate bone from the edible tissue. Just like Ma used to make. On top of that, to save costs, Lunchables came packaged with processed cheese. And to extend shelf life, the crackers were butter crackers. In other words, pretty much every ingredient in Lunchables was the most unhealthy version of that particular food possible in terms of calories, fat, and sodium. Like each ingredient fell into a vat of deliciousness, like a snack food joker. In fact, it was so bad that the CEO of Oscar Mayer's parent company once joked that the healthiest ingredient in Lunchables was the napkin. And to those of you who just asked, what napkin? Ironically, the napkin was later removed to save money. Speaking of cost-cutting, there isn't a 90s kid alive who doesn't get a little teary-eyed thinking about the red plastic stick in pizza Lunchables. What the heck are we talking about? Well, when they were first introduced, pizza Lunchables came packaged with a short red plastic stick that was included to help kids spread the pizza sauce on the crust. But in the early aughts, the red stick mysteriously vanished. Disgruntled consumers threatened revolution, but it did no good. Despite a number of petitions, the stick, which was a victim of cost-cutting like the napkin, was gone for good. And if you're wondering how kids were supposed to spread their sauce on the crust without the stick, the answer is Oscar Mayer didn't know, and Oscar Mayer didn't care. And to be honest, even when we had the stick, most of us just used our fingers anyway. By 1994, after Lunchables had blown up even more in popularity, a prominent pediatric cardiologist tried warning people that they were a, quote, nutritional disaster. Oscar Mayer responded with sarcasm, saying, "There are very few kids out there who will eat rice cakes and tofu." If the cardiologist had a comeback to that, We don't know, because he was presumably pelted to death with Lunchables hurled by hungry children. In all fairness, Oscar Mayer has made several attempts to make Lunchables healthier. For example, at one point they attempted to add carrots and apple slices, but the new ingredients would quickly go bad in the container, and variations that replaced the candy with things like yogurt or fruit simply didn't sell. The free market has spoken, and it doesn't want tofu and rice cakes. Anyone who hasn't been permanently banned from the grocery store for the past 40 years is probably familiar with the standard Lunchables and the legendary pizza Lunchables. But those two were just the tip of the iceberg. Alternate Lunchables configurations include things like extra cheesy pizza, ham and cheddar with vanilla cream cookies, turkey cheddar and crackers, and turkey and American cracker stackers with double stuffed Oreo cookies. Noteworthy variations from Lunchables past include things like mini burgers, which included 2 small burgers, mustard, a Capri Sun, and some Reese's Pieces. You didn't have to heat up the burgers, but people didn't exactly rave about their taste. Turns out room temperature burgers are a tough sell. There were also Lunchables waffles, which included waffle sticks, syrup, icing, sausage, orange juice, and a cereal bar. It sounds like enough glorious sugar to power any kid through an entire school day, but based on reviews, it didn't quite stack up. Lunchables mini tacos came with tortillas, beef, cheese, taco sauce, a drink, and Nerds candies. And there was an Italian-style chicken variety, which was basically just cold chicken nuggets with marinara sauce and mozzarella cheese. We're veering dangerously into airplane food territory over here, Oscar Mayer. And of course, the popularity of the Lunchables name led to some experimentation with spin-off products. Can't leave money stacked up on the table like so many cracker sandwiches. For example, there were Lunchables Fun Stacks, which included things like s'mores, fudge brownie, marshmallow crispy squares, Chips Ahoy soft cookie and frosting, and Oreo cookies and frosting. We have to admit, cookies and frosting do sound fun. In 2017, the world bought nearly $1.4 billion worth of Lunchables, which is enough to make anyone consider a career in lunch meat. These days, there are about 40 different types available. Popular varieties include chicken pizza, ham and cheddar cracker stackers, pepperoni and mozzarella with crackers, pizza and treatza, mini hot dogs, and ham and American cracker stackers. And just in case there remains any doubt that Oscar Mayer has completely moved on from trying to make the brand nutritious, there are also Lunchables Dunkables. These snacks include varieties like pretzel twists with peanut butter spread and choco chips, as well as matzo sticks with marinara and breadcrumbs. If that doesn't sound bad enough for your waistline, we recommend Lunchables Grilled Cheesies, which sounds like a joke but are all too real. They also come in 2 flavors, original and pepperoni pizza sandwich. And then there's Lunchables Uploaded, which are basically the same thing as regular Lunchables, but with bigger portions, different package art, and a name that sounds like one of the Matrix sequels. In 2023, Oscar Mayer managed to get Lunchables, their fun but admittedly unhealthy line of junk food, approved as an option for school lunch menus across America. If you're wondering how they pulled that off, according to the Washington Post, the weak standards that govern federally subsidized school lunches illustrate the power of the food industry in Congress and the outsized influence of food companies. Higher ingredient costs, labor shortages, and tighter budgets have backed many schools into a corner. As a result, executives at Oscar Mayer's parent company have estimated the educational food services market to be an untapped opportunity worth $25 billion. So far, there are 2 varieties available: turkey and cheddar cracker stackers and extra cheesy pizza. And in all fairness, the Lunchables they're selling to schools aren't the same ones you get in the supermarket. They've been reformulated to meet federal guidelines about what can be served at schools, so they are technically healthier than regular Lunchables. Long story short, they have a higher protein content, but a lot more sodium. As you can probably imagine, childhood nutrition advocates and many teachers do not agree with the decision to make Lunchables available in school cafeterias. But do we really need to bring up the rice and tofu example again? Until health food starts coming in fun packaging, featuring a mascot riding a skateboard, kids are gonna go with Lunchables every time. And that's the way the Oreo cookies and frosting crumble.
Nothing's more American than baseball and the Hostess Twinkie. Except maybe Mark McGwire belting a Twinkie 400 feet out of Busch Stadium. And for the past 100 years, Hostess has been hitting home run after home run with iconic snacks like cupcakes, snowballs, ding-dongs, and ho-hos. Until they almost struck out for good. Today, we're putting the icing on the history of Hostess. Okay, time to see how many donuts we can eat before the end of this video. The Hostess story begins with a father-son baking team at the turn of the 19th century. In the late 1800s, Hugh Ward and his son Robert moved from New York City to what was then called Allegheny City, a municipality that would eventually be annexed by the ever-growing Pittsburgh. Some of Pittsburgh's other famous annexations include ketchup and Terry Bradshaw's hair. Back in New York, Hugh and his own father had run a small bakery on Broome Street. Eager to keep the family trade alive, Hugh and Robert opened up an all-new operation in Pennsylvania. Robert grew up immersed in baking, and once he got a little bit older, he started yet another bakery just across the Allegheny River. This third business, the Ward Bread Company, would slowly grow into the largest single bakery in America by the 1900s. Turns out getting in on the ground floor of bread was a good move for the Wards. With loads of cash in hand, Robert decided to turn the whole ship around and head back to New York, the Bacon State. But this time, he was able to build two huge factories right from the jump, one in the Bronx, the other in Brooklyn, for a cool $2 million in construction costs. That's over $60 million in today's money. In other words, Robert Ward was planning to do a shitload of baking.
Yeah, boy.
These two state-of-the-art facilities opened up in 1911 and were capable of turning out more than 800,000 loaves of bread each and every day. Their most famous product soon became Ward's Tip Top Bread, which is a less thrilling lunchbox treat than a Twinkie. But you gotta start somewhere. The company trucked along over the following decade, with Robert's son William taking over operations in 1921. By 1925, William had changed the company's name to Continental Baking Company and had bought up 3 other bread-making competitors, including Wonder Bread. But like many short-sighted sandwich artists, they were still stuck on bread when the world of sugary cakes was right in front of their eyes. Luckily, around this time, the company began producing its first-ever cupcakes. Though this early version of the snack lacked both the creamy center and the signature white squiggle of frosting on today's cupcake, it helped to launch an all-new brand of pre-packaged desserts for continental baking. They called the brand Hostess, and the world would never be the same. In 1920, James A. Dewar began his career with Continental Baking Company, selling pound cakes out of a horse-drawn carriage, which is one of the most 1920 professions you could possibly have. By 1930, he'd climbed the corporate ladder into a plant manager position at Continental's Chicago-based Hostess Bakery. Among the bakery's best-selling products were their strawberry shortcakes. But back then, fruits and vegetables were only available during certain times of the year, because there really wasn't a way to transport fresh produce across long distances and have it still be, well, fresh. Consequently, Hostess was only able to produce strawberry shortcakes for a few months each year. This should have been enough to inspire any human to invent interstates and refrigerated trucks, but Dewar had a different and much more practical idea. What if, during the off-season, they filled their strawberry shortcakes with a simple sugar cream?
Creamy!
After seeing a visually striking advertisement for Twinkle Toe shoes, he decided to adapt that branding for his new desserts, and dubbed the Frankensteined new treats Twinkies. At the low cost of 2 for 5 cents, they were an instant success with Depression-era families. If only everyone had been able to invest in Twinkies, Black Tuesday may have been avoided. Over the next half-century, Dewar's product would grow into a cultural phenomenon. For instance, the 1974 song The Ballad of the Junk Food Junkie, which features a man who secretly eats Twinkies in the dark of night, like every single one of us has done at one point in our lives, spent 15 weeks on the Billboard Hot 100. Likewise, Archie Bunker of the 1970s sitcom All in the Family loved Twinkies.
And I was just about to open up my lunchbox. By the way, there wasn't no Twinkie in with the sandwiches today.
Maybe not the most ringing endorsement, but it was a popular show. However, the runaway success of the Twinkie almost backfired on Hostess in 1978, after disgruntled former San Francisco City Supervisor Dan White assassinated Mayor George Moscone and City Supervisor Harvey Milk. When White stood trial the following year, he claimed he wasn't in his right mind at the time of the crime because he was in the midst of a sugar-fueled mania, brought on by binge-eating Twinkies and Coke. The media dubbed it the Twinkie defense, and despite sounding like an excuse you would have concocted at age 5 to explain why you bit Jimmy Donaldson, the jury miraculously bought it. White's so-called Twinkie defense saved him from first-degree murder charges and landed him only 7 years in prison for manslaughter. But, like most things we love that aren't good for us, Twinkies carried on. In 1984, the Twinkie was featured prominently in Ghostbusters, in a memorable scene comparing the spongy yellow snack cake to an impending paranormal cataclysm.
That's a big Twinkie.
When Dewar passed away the following year at age 84, he'd allegedly consumed 2 whole packs of Twinkies each week throughout his life. assuming we're talking twin packs. That's well over 10,000 Twinkies between their invention in 1930 and Dewar's final ride on the Twinkie train in 1985. That's enough cream filling to fill several wading pools and convince everyone to leave your 4th of July barbecue early. As the post-Twinkie years wore on, Hostess was on the lookout for their next home run. And in 1940, they found just the thing, the donut, a tiny donut that could be shipped to stores across America and that were, due to their tiny size, a bit more affordable for cash-strapped Americans. They also have the notable advantage of being smaller than a standard donut, which means you can eat more of them faster. 7 years later, after World War II's sugar rationing came to an end, Hostess came out with a product that made full use of the lifted sugar restrictions, the ever-luxurious Snowball. Snowballs are marshmallow-covered cupcakes coated in coconut flakes, making them the perfect treat for sugar-starved post-war Americans, and anyone who really likes coconut. A year later, in 1948, a man by the name of Dr. Doc Rice was put in charge of revamping Hostess's 30-year-old cupcakes. Once again, the company wanted to make full use of their newly unlimited sugar supply, and so Doc sweetened up the cake mix and the chocolate icing, pumped the cupcakes full of cream filling, and drew a sweet squiggly line across the top of each one, like they're wearing little sneakers. And voila! The modern Hostess cupcake was born and released to the wider public in 1950. The company then took this cream-filled idea and applied it to snowballs, which is like adding rockets to a skateboard. You just made a cool thing even cooler. From there, they went hog wild with cream filling, as if they were trying to make enough to produce the giant Twinkie from Ghostbusters lore. 1961 saw the release of the chocolatey cream-filled Suzy Q, while 1967 saw the release of both the Ho-Ho and the Ding Dong. Stuffed with enough chocolate and cream to drown the Keebler elves in their hollow baking tree. And just 3 years after that, Hostess released yet another cream-filled snack, the Zinger, which comes in devil's food, vanilla, and raspberry. As Hostess's product line grew even larger, so too did the reliance on mascots and media tie-ins. You can't sell food to kids without putting eyes on it and giving it a name. It's the law. Of their original characters, arguably the most famous is Twinkie the Kid, the little cowboy-looking sponge cake who may have grown up to become a doctor someday if we could have just stopped eating him. Then there's Captain Cupcake, who looks like a snack Ringo hallucinated on the Yellow Submarine. Happy Ho-Ho, who is, Robin Hood, maybe? Peter Pan? Whatever he is, they did a good job of making us want to bite his head off immediately. Chief Big Wheels, who, yeah, we can just leave that one in the past. They also had King Ding Dong, a genial monarch loved by his people until he was slain in a war for succession in 1457. Chauncey Chocodile, who looks like he gives free airboat rides to anyone who can answer how many #1 singles Willie Nelson has. And Fruit Pie the Magician, who actually kind of looks more like a taco. Maybe that's the magic trick. All of these lovable characters were used on packaging and in television commercials to hook the children of the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. Each snack these mascots represented has likewise had many variations over the years. The cupcake alone can today be found in orange, red velvet, and iced lemon, but has seen an additional 20 or so flavors come and go with the passing seasons, including candy corn, pumpkin spice, and shamrock. What flavor is shamrock? All the while, Twinkies have seen more remixes than Daft Punk. They've had peppermint, chocolate peanut butter, deep-fried banana, cotton candy, and orange creme pop, among dozens of other flavors. In 1984, Ralston Purina, the creators of both cereals and pet foods, bought Continental Baking Company for about $500 million, only to sell it to Interstate Bakeries Corporation 11 years later. Oh, hot potato. Or would that be hot Twinkie? It would indeed be hot Twinkie, as Twinkies were involved in yet another legal scandal in 1986. 71-year-old Minneapolis City Council candidate George L. Belair was accused of using Twinkies and Ho-Hos to bribe senators and election officials. Belair was indicted and arrested for the incident, but he pled not guilty, claiming that his handing out of Hostess snacks was simply a nice gesture and was in no way meant to influence the way anyone voted. Belair successfully got the charges dismissed, narrowly avoiding a potential $700 fine and 3 whole months in prison. After struggling for years, IBC filed for bankruptcy and attempted to rebrand, changing their name to Hostess Brands in 2009. But in 2012, as the world braced for a Roland Emmerich apocalypse, Hostess Brands filed for bankruptcy again. In the months that followed, Twinkies, Ho-Hos, Ding Dongs, and more vanished without a trace. Not even Emmerich could have predicted that disaster. In the aftermath of the Great Twinkie collapse, the snack cake portion of Hostess Brands was sold to Apollo Global Management and C. Dean Metropolis & Company for $410 million. And less than a year after going off the market, Hostess products slowly made their triumphant return to store shelves, like snowballs finally emerging from their hiding place in your sock drawer. Over the 3 years that followed, the brand was whipped into shape like a tub of Twinkie filling and built back to its former glory. And on September 11, 2023, Smucker's revealed it was buying Hostess for $5.6 billion. Now that is a big Twinkie. Hostess continues to sell all of their classic snacks, including honey buns, coffee cakes, fruit pies, and mini muffins. What's more, the company pumps out over 1 million Twinkies every single day, producing about 400 million Twinkies each and every year. That's more than the total population of the U.S. But despite the urban legend that all of us have heard, Twinkies will not survive a nuclear war. They can't even survive all that long on the shelf, with an expiration date just 65 days from the point of being baked. No wonder Woody Harrelson was so desperate. Although they debuted in 1985, Bagel Bites were synonymous with the 1990s, the decade that saw them fill the freezers of virtually every suburban home in America. But other than the fact that you can eat them in the morning, eat them in the evening, or eat them at supper time, what do you really know about them? The world's most famous brand of tiny frozen pizzas seem to have appeared out of nowhere. So, today we're heating up the delicious history of Bagel Bites.
Time. When pizza's on a bagel, you can eat pizza anytime.
Hi, today on Cafe Zoom, we're going to be making a pizza bagel.
The East and West coasts of the United States have been embroiled in some historic feuds. But the most controversial coast-to-coast battle of them all has to be the dispute over who invented the pizza bagel. The West Coast contingent credits Bruce Treitman, a Los Angeles-based financial advisor, who claims that he invented the pizza bagel while experimenting with new recipes in the kitchen of a Western bagel in Woodland Hills, California, way back when he was in high school. But East Coasters back Richard Katz of the Chelsea, Massachusetts-based Katz Bagel Bakery. A third-generation bagel baker, Katz insists his father, Harry Katz, invented pizza bagels sometime in the early 1970s. Both men have pointed to evidence they believe substantiate their respective claims, and neither seems willing to accept the idea that putting tomato sauce and mozzarella cheese on a bagel might be a prime example of parallel thinking.
Be creative and try all the ideas that you want. Bon appetit.
Regardless of who came up with the idea, neither of those guys thought of turning the idea into a frozen food, which is to say, neither invented Bagel Bites. And for that, they have no one to blame but themselves.
No, I was here before you were even born.
Bagel Bites were officially invented in 1985 by tennis partners Bob Mosher and Stanley Garzinski of Fort Myers, Florida. But according to Garzinski, it was really more like a team effort between the men and their respective wives. Mosher was in the catering business, and one night while at a party with Garzinski and their significant others, he complained that it was hard to find things kids liked to eat. Someone, no one remembers who, observed the only thing kids really like is pizza. This truism would echo throughout the 80s and 90s. From there, the conversation evolved to coming up with some sort of pizza-related hors d'oeuvre for children. Someone came up with the idea of using bagels. Someone else suggested the name Bagel Bites. And that's how the single most important conversation in the history of frozen snack foods took place. The two invested $20,000 into the company, rented a 2,000 square foot warehouse in Fort Myers, and focused all their efforts on getting their frozen snack business off the ground. To get a toehold, they started out by targeting hotels, bars, and restaurants in their hometown. And the strategy worked? Big time. They sold $500,000 worth of Bagel Bites in their first year alone. That's a lot of middle school birthday parties. According to Garzinski, he and Mosier made all the original Bagel Bites by hand on an assembly line. The bagels would be dumped out, and a little cylinder would then pump some sauce onto them. Cheese would be sprinkled on top, and then it would go into the freezer until it was time to be shipped. The two would travel to big national food shows in places like Chicago, Boston, Atlanta, Dallas, and, for obvious reasons, would always try to get a booth near the beer vendors. Because the only people who like frozen pizza more than children are drunk adults. The strategy paid off, and they sold Bagel Bites by the bagful, making their first big sales to price clubs like Sam's Club, BJ's, Macro, and Costco. Garzinski would later recall that they made $500,000 in their first year, and just a few years later, they were raking in $10 million. After that, big brands started hounding them to sell. They held out until 1987, when they sold the company to John Labatt Company, a major Canadian food manufacturer. Some days you buy a company, some days a company buys you. And in 1991, Heinz bought a large portion of John Labatt Company. Heinz began selling Bagel Bites under their Ore-Ida brand, which also produces other frozen foods like French fries and tater tots.
To sum it all up, I'd say they really taste, good.
Ore-Ida, America's favorite brand of frozen potatoes, because they really taste good.
As for Mosier and Garzinski, they decided to stick around a while. Mosier was put in charge of managing the factory that made Bagel Bites, which by that point had swelled to 350 employees. Garzinski was put in charge of North America club sales for Bagel Bites and all kinds of other products. After their 5-year contracts expired, the two decided they were ready for a new challenge. That challenge turned out to be building commercial and retail properties at their new companies, Sox Development Incorporated and Sox Investments. Their first project? Building a new Bagel Bites factory for Heinz. Bagel Bites are like the Corleone family. Just when you think you're out, they pull you back in. If there's one thing American culture teaches us, it's that you should never underestimate the power of a good advertising jingle. Jingles taught generations of kids to be all we can be, and that our bologna has a first name. The Bagel Bites jingle is almost as famous as the product itself, and many of you watching could probably sing the entire thing from memory. According to the lyrics, pizza in the morning, pizza in the evening, pizza at supper time. When pizza's on a bagel, you can eat pizza anytime. It really makes you think about pizza bagels. Before you congratulate Bagel Bites on coming up with such a catchy little earworm, know that it's actually just a twist on a song from 1957 by the McGuire sisters called Sugar Time.
Sugar in the morning, sugar in the evening, sugar at supper time. Be my little sugar and love me all the time.
It's not bad, but it definitely doesn't make us want Bagel Bites as much as the other version, so you can see why they made the change. Rock singer Meat Loaf has always been very open about the fact that he would do anything for love. But based on an appearance he made on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, it seems that when he's not searching for paradise by the dashboard light, Meat would also do anything for Bagel Bites. On April 26, 2011, the crooner took the stage as Fallon's musical guest, duetting with the host himself on a parody of the famous Bagel Bites jingle. The title of the operatic parody was Ode to Bagel Bites, and it featured the duo emotionally explaining that Bagel Bites could, exactly as the jingle claims, be eaten anytime. Not every jingle gets belted out by a Grammy winner. In 2000, Bagel Bites joined AT&T, Nike, Mountain Dew, Taco Bell, and Volkswagen to sponsor ESPN's 2000 Winter X Games, touted as the Winter Olympics of extreme sports. Despite all those heavy hitters, according to ESPN, one company that didn't need any help attracting crowds to its tents was Ore-Ida Bagel Bites. Crowds were standing 4 and 5 deep to get a free sample of the bite-sized pizza bagels. One of the bagel slingers who worked the event told the network, "We've served around 7,000 Bagel Bites in the last 2 days. It's been a great experience. We can't seem to make them fast enough, and we're expecting people tomorrow." But the non-stop foot traffic wouldn't be the only win Bagel Bites scored at the Winter X Games. They recruited a special spokesman for the occasion, Tony Hawk. Often referred to as the Michael Jordan of skateboarding, Tony Hawk is a professional skateboarder, entrepreneur, and eternal teenager who gifted us all the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater series of video games. So when Bagel Bites snagged his endorsement for the Winter X Games, they decided to send the legendary extreme athlete on a national radio tour promoting their sponsorship. As prolific a pitchman as he is a skateboarder, Hawk's tour reached 7 million tweens in nearly 70 markets.
And now
Bagel Bites, an official sponsor of the Winter X Games, wants to send you to this summer's X Games. Check out the grocery store. Log on to bagelbites.com for more info. Many will enter, few will win. Bagel Bites, bite into excitement.
Long story short, his endorsement generated an extreme boost in sales. After 13 weeks of advertising with the Birdman, the company saw a 26% increase in consumption. And the following year, Bagel Bites experienced an astounding 32% increase in sales. Results that at least one advertising analyst felt almost defy logic for a 15-year-old brand. With that kind of success, you'd think they would bring Hawk on as a full-time spokesman even after the Winter X Games ended. And that's exactly what they did. The company noted the response to Hawk's endorsement and, cleverly taking advantage of the hype surrounding his career and recent video game, they decided to make him their principal spokesperson. Among other things, the Birdman was featured in a series of now classic commercials in which he hawked Bagel Bites from atop his board. Sales of Bagel Bites shot through the roof like Tony Hawk doing a sick-ass vert trick. Their reputation as a cool kid snack was sealed.
Excuse me, Mr. Hawk. Could you, share? No way. Bagel Bites, now!
Back in the 90s, there were really only two options for your Bagel Bites: cheese and pepperoni. Not that we're complaining. But time marches on, and everything, even Bagel Bites, must evolve. Today, you can buy them in several varieties, which are still mostly pizza-inspired. Why mess with a good thing? 3 cheese, for example, is a combination of, 3 cheeses, which are specifically mozzarella, Monterey Jack, and cheddar over marinara sauce. Other varieties include breakfast style with bacon, egg, and cheese. You can even get bagel dogs, which sounds like a Pixar film but are actually pig-in-a-blanket style Oscar Mayer mini hot dogs wrapped in a bagel batter. Despite all the meatloaf and Tony Hawk, Bagel Bites also have a dark side. In the early 2000s, Totino's pizza rolls were making a name for themselves in the frozen pizza snack business. And Bagel Bites was not having that shit. They ran an ad with a side-by-side photo comparison of a pizza roll and a Bagel Bite, which highlighted the ingredients of the cheese used in the two products. Long story short, the Bagel Bites people accused the Totino's people of using an extremely unhealthy processed mozzarella cheese substitute, while pointing out that Bagel Bites used real cheese in their product. The ad then asked the melodramatically leading question, which would you give your kids? Bet that scorched the roofs of their mouths. And if starting the whole cheese-related beef wasn't enough, it turned out that all the bluster about their real cheese may actually just have been a lot of bull. According to Food and Wine, in May of 2021, a class action lawsuit seeking monetary and injunctive relief was filed in the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Wisconsin, alleging that Bagel Bites was deceiving their customers through statements on the packaging since the product does not contain real mozzarella cheese and tomato sauce, as these foods are understood and expected by consumers. Bagel Bites responded that the lawsuit lacks any merit and that they would strongly defend their brand, and it appears they did. The suit was dismissed in 2022. Most people love Bagel Bites, but some people really love Bagel Bites. According to a survey of over 28,000 homes conducted from February of 2014 to March of 2015, 1.24% of U.S. households devour 5 or more packs of Bagel Bites over the course of 30 days. In other words, roughly 350 of the homes surveyed were burning through 5 or more boxes of Bagel Bites a month. How could anyone possibly eat so many Bagel Bites, you ask? We assume they must be eating pizza in the morning, in the evening, and at supper time. Because when pizza is on a bagel, well, you know. Sing it, meat.
Oh, you can eat pizza anytime, yeah.
If you were alive in the 1980s and 90s, then you remember the glory days of fruit snacks. Some of them were gummy, some of them gushed, and some of them were oddly stringy. But the undisputed champion of fruity deliciousness was the snack that rolled. General Mills' legendary fruit roll-ups have been a part of kids' lunches and snack times since 1983. And over the years, they've had their sticky fingers on all sorts of triumphs and controversies. But how were they invented? And exactly how much fruit is rolled into that cellophane wrapper? Today, we're rolling out the red carpet to figure out how much fruit is actually in a fruit roll-up. While the brightly colored sugary fruit snack might seem like a modern invention, the Fruit Roll-Ups rollout actually started at the beginning of the 20th century. In the Little Syria neighborhood of New York City, Syrian immigrant George Shaloub began to sell apricot paste imported from his home country. The paste arrived on American soil in large, hard sheets. And if you wanted a bite, you had to head over to the sweets shop George Shaloub & Son, located on 65 Washington Street, and ask Old George to snip you off a piece. Early adopters called this sweet treat by all sorts of appetizing names like cowhide, fruit leather, and shoe leather, because it was as tough as leather to chew through. But its real name was Amerdine. Amerdine continued to be a local favorite until the 1940s, when the entire neighborhood of Little Syria was demolished to make room for New York's Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. Many businesses, including Shaloub's Sweet Shop, were forced to relocate to Brooklyn. A new location also meant a new name for George Shaloub & Son. The titular son had grown up to be a man with a son of his own, and so the shop became Joseph Shaloub & Son. The new son was Louis Shaloub, who left the business to fight in the Korean War in 1950. When he returned home, he did so with 2 Bronze Stars and a new lease on life. Louis was tired of snipping apricot paste off giant sheets in his family store and dreamed of selling Amerdine on a larger scale. He and his wife Madeline went about the arduous process of hand-cutting the paste into small circles, hanging them to dry, rolling them up, and packing them for sale in single servings. Louis named the fledgling manufacturing business Joe Ray, a combination of his sons' names, because the Shaloubs are nothing if not consistent with their naming conventions. At least it's more creative than Louis Shaloub & Sons. In 1960, they sold their first individually wrapped fruit leather, which they called a fruit roll. And by the 1970s, Joe Ray was garnering widespread acclaim. The brand was spotlighted in a trade publication, and Louis laid out the process of making his popular fruit rolls in surprising detail. This proved to be good news for fruit roll-up fans, but bad news for Joe Ray, because once that article was circulated across the country, other companies with more resources were able to replicate Louis's method. The first attempt came from Sunkist in the 1970s, but lurking in the shadows was a much bigger threat to Joe Ray's success. After years of research and detailed production plans, General Mills was about to rock the world with its own version of Louis Shaloub's family recipe. According to General Mills' version of history, the company didn't actually set out to create fruit roll-ups. They had their sights set on creating a shelf-stable fruitcake filling, and when their experiments produced something akin to fruit leather, they ran with it. Or rolled with it? After years of tinkering with the recipe, General Mills put their new product out for a test run in 1979. It's unknown what kind of reception it received, but it must not have been overwhelmingly positive because it was pulled from stores. After 4 years of additional tweaks, General Mills finally released its fruit roll-up in 1983.
New Fruit Corners Fruit Roll-Ups. Real fruit and fun rolled up in one.
Unlike its predecessor, this version of the well-known fruit leather snack was an instantaneous hit with customers. Rather than a simple apricot puree, General Mills' fruit roll-ups were primarily made from pear puree concentrate, maltodextrin, sugar, natural flavors, partially hydrogenated soybean oil, citric acid, sodium citrate, artificial colors, and pectin, which is a naturally occurring gelling agent found in fruits. The flavors on offer were the traditional apricot, as well as apple, cherry, and strawberry. And while the product itself was tasty, it was General Mills' marketing expertise that really took fruit roll-ups to the next level. They advertised the new snack as a fruit-based option for kids that they could eat with their hands. All you had to do was unroll the snack, peel it off the thin cellophane wrapper, and chew. So parents were happy that their children were eating fruit, and kids were happy that their hands were sticky. It was a win-win. After the fruit roll-up's encouraging initial release, General Mills ramped up their marketing efforts. Children everywhere were begging their parents for the snack they could tear, share, rock, and roll. 1985 saw a promotion with Crayola, where each box of fruit roll-ups came with a single loose Crayola-branded marker for some reason. And in 1986, they started to release new flavors, like the watermelon fruit roll-up, which was introduced in a commercial featuring a bunch of chimpanzees on a school bus. The 80s were a weird decade. But luckily for General Mills, the 90s were even more kind to their fruity snack. The decade saw the quick rise and fall of a mascot called the Great Ralupo, who, according to the General Mills website, enticed kids to enjoy a rainbow of fruit flavors.
With one fruit roll-up and imagination, you can have tons of taste sensations.
Which is something you typically read in the Wikipedia entry of a man who died in prison. Ralupo only lasted a year as the brand's mascot, but he did usher in the now iconic era of peel-out shapes, where fruit roll-ups were perforated to make the shape of cars, game pieces, and movies and TV characters. As if kids weren't sticky enough already, they were now being encouraged to literally play with their food. soon, they were joined by other General Mills fruit snacks that hoped to rise to the same level of success. First on the scene in 1991 were the now beloved Gushers, which are still staining t-shirts and causing cavities today. But a stranger and shorter-lived fruit snack was 1994's String Thing. String Thing came pre-packaged in various shapes, which kids then peeled off the wrapping and played with like a slippery, sugary toy. You could wear your String Thing like jewelry, play cat's cradle with your friends' grubby hands, probably drop it on the ground at some point, and then finally put it in your mouth and eat it. Perhaps because it was closer to biological warfare than a fun snack, String Thing was discontinued in the 2000s. Also in the 2000s, fruit roll-ups were being reimagined once again, this time to include a selection of tongue tattoos. If you're picturing your box of fruit roll-ups coming with a loose tattoo gun, have no fear. These tattoos were strictly temporary. Regular fruit roll-ups came equipped with the design stamped into them with edible dye. All a kid had to do was press the design to their tongue and let it transfer. The tongue tattoos became a sensation, and fruit roll-ups continued their reign as one of the most popular fruit snacks on the market. But like their tattoos, fruit roll-ups' market domination was only temporary. Like many supposedly healthy foods of the 80s and 90s, fruit roll-ups were eventually found to be less than ideal when it came to their sugar content. In 2011, the Center for Science and the Public Interest sued General Mills over its misleading marketing.
Fruit roll-ups, real fruit and fun rolled up in one.
CSPI claimed that General Mills advertised fruit roll-ups as nutritious and healthy, when in reality, they contained about as much nutritional value as a serving of gummy bears. CSPI argued that fruit roll-ups weren't so much fruit snacks as they were fruit-inspired candy, and that argument ultimately proved to be completely true. Rather than fighting their snacks classification, General Mills actually fought the lawsuit on the basis that they didn't advertise fruit roll-ups as healthy. The suit was ultimately settled out of court, and General Mills was allowed to continue making fruit roll-ups, which contained around 7 grams of sugar per roll. But while many have turned away from fruit roll-ups in their more recent years due to the potential health risks, there are still some who love the sugary snack for what it is. They love it so much that they're even willing to smuggle it into their country. In 2023, an American couple was stopped at Israel's border after being caught with 375 pounds of General Mills fruit roll-ups. Just a few days later, 10 more boxes were found through the local post system, the largest weighing about 38 pounds for a total of around 350. You might be wondering what would compel someone to sneak hundreds of pounds of candy into a country, and the answer is TikTok. A viral trend on the app saw people wrapping spoonfuls of ice cream in fruit roll-ups and eating the sickeningly sweet treat on camera. Hi! TikTok users in Israel were particularly enthralled by this innovative dessert, and fruit roll-ups suddenly started selling out in stores. If latecomers to the trend wanted to make their tooth-rotting dreams come true, they had to turn to the candy black market. Blood sugar be damned. That same year, TikTok struck again when some users took to the app to claim that fruit roll-up cellophane wrappers were actually edible. Most people know you can't eat plastic, but to the young children who are fruit roll-ups' target demographic, that might make sense. After all, fruit roll-ups look like Shrek and Sonic the Hedgehog sometimes, so why couldn't they look like a plastic wrapper? Whatever the reason, the rumor gained enough ground for General Mills to address it. The company's TikTok account commented on one of the now infamous videos to say, "Legal is making me clarify that you should not attempt to eat plastic." We know fruit roll-ups aren't great for you, but they've got fruit in their name. Just how much real fruit is in one of those delicious plastic-wrapped sheets? The unfortunate answer is not much. That same 2011 lawsuit, the Center for Science and the Public Interest pointed out that there were actually no strawberries in the strawberry-flavored fruit roll-up, 0. And so, General Mills is not allowed to print pictures of real strawberries on its fruit roll-ups packaging. If you've ever wondered why they don't put fruit on the box to make the flavors a little easier to distinguish when you're breezing through the grocery store, this is the reason. The ingredients in modern fruit roll-ups are surprisingly similar to the ones found in the original rollout. They still contain around 7 grams of sugar, and they're just as tasty as they were in 1983. If you want a more natural version of a fruit roll-up with actual fruit in it, Joe Ray is still selling its fruit rolls. But while they may contain genuine strawberries, they also contain a whopping 9 grams of sugar. So maybe just buy a pack of strawberries instead. But those don't come with tongue tattoos. Anyone who grew up in the 1990s probably has warm, fuzzy, carbonated memories of Crystal Pepsi. The most iconic product of the clear cola craze, Crystal Pepsi was supposed to be the next big thing, but it fizzled out almost as soon as it arrived. So what happened? Well, today we're unbottling why Crystal Pepsi disappeared. Crystal Pepsi was first released in 1992, making its debut in a limited number of regional guinea pig markets, including Denver, Colorado, Sacramento, California, Dallas, Texas, and Providence, Rhode Island. They love invisible soda in Rhode Island.
Well, what if you're drinking a regular Pepsi and somebody's coming at you with a knife? Huh? You won't be able to see them past your Pepsi.
After establishing that there was a cry, nay, a demand, for a smooth, clear, cola-esque beverage, the company opted to release the product to stores nationwide. By 1993, supermarkets across the nation had received an influx of Crystal Pepsi, but by then, it wasn't the only brand of clear soda on the shelves, for the new generation or otherwise. The success that Pepsi had seen in their trial run of the product had leaked out to competitors, particularly their chief competitor, Coca-Cola. Smelling an opportunity, Coke decided to jump into the new market with its own brand of clear soda, Tab Clear. Before interested consumers could even decide which one they preferred, they found themselves in the middle of a full-blown clear cola battle royale. Shoppers were quickly inundated with more clear soda options than they knew what to do with, and the intense competition didn't turn out to be good for anyone involved. The clear craze hit the tail end of the 1980s, the decade that kneecapped Coca-Cola like Tony Soprano with the disastrous release of New Coke. The big red one could ill afford another massive public failure. So on December 14th, 1982, just 1 week after the Van Hagar-ific debut of Crystal Pepsi, Coca-Cola decided it was time to roll up their corn syrup-stained sleeves and release their very own clear soda in an effort to compete. Or so it seemed. You see, rather than going with the more obvious clear Coke, Coke sold their crystal beverage as Tab Clear, claiming that they wanted to avoid creating too direct a competition with its own Coke-specific label. They then added insult to injury by stating that clear Coke is an oxymoron, and that to create a clear Coke modeled directly off of Pepsi's would simply be aiming too low. They must have still been feeling that New Coke indigestion. Still, many critics said the Coca-Cola's design to align their clear marketing push with Tab, an offshoot brand marketed almost exclusively to older women, would place limits on customer interest and essentially hand the market over to Pepsi. In truth, there was much more devious reasoning at work behind the strategy. Years later, Coke executives would admit that they chose Tab to be the competitor in an effort to deliberately confuse customers into thinking Crystal Pepsi was a diet soda, diet sodas being significantly less popular than regular brands. In other words, Tab Clear was specifically designed to fail as a product and take Crystal Pepsi down with it. And after just a few months, the plan worked like a charm. As it became the trend for many companies year after year, Pepsi decided to promote their big new product at the Super Bowl. With the help of a commercial that aligned almost perfectly with the early 90s consumer ideals, Crystal Pepsi was strewn across television sets nationwide, accompanied by the sounds of Van Halen's hit single, Right Now. The commercial featured images of the clear soda alongside allegedly inspiring video clips. Most memorably, a series of bizarre and puzzling images of an animated baby who appeared to be crawling around in what might be a desert or the bottom of the ocean. That was followed promptly by a chaotically spinning watch, a reminder that, right now, computers still can't laugh, shots of animals running in the wild, and other such allegedly thought-provoking imagery. The end result looked like Dan Brown and the Zodiac Killer in a secret message fight. What was the point of all the weird imagery? Apparently, the message was intended to convey that there's no time like the present to enjoy a pure, crisp, clear Crystal Pepsi. So drink it right now. And the marketing execs felt a cartoon baby and existential thought experiments about robots would be the perfect way to get their point across. The 90s were indeed mysterious. Though many of Crystal Pepsi's supporters originally believed the innovative soda was akin to when the chocolate industry began to sell white chocolate, it quickly became apparent such predictions were wishful thinking, like Nostradamus buying a scratch ticket. Due at least in part to an oversaturated market, the clear cola craze didn't last long in the US or abroad.
That's weird. You don't expect something that white to taste like cocoa.
Within a year of Crystal Pepsi's initial release, the market became so inundated with copycat sodas and a host of other clear products that consumers got burned out. Pepsi had no choice but to dramatically scale back the product and rethink the brand. After the unanticipated downfall of the Crystal Pepsi launch in 1993, PepsiCo pulled the product from shelves and tried to reinterpret its clear cola goals from a new lens. The result was two eerily similar products, both sporting the same visual appeal as Crystal Pepsi, but each with a slight twist of their own. The first variation on the original, released soon after the total and, quite frankly, rude deletion of Crystal Pepsi, was simply called Crystal. Despite appearing incredibly similar to the original product and having virtually the same name, Crystal was actually a citrus-flavored beverage rather than another clear soda. The second and final variation came up a year later in 1995 under PepsiCo's sub-brand 7-Up and was called 7-Up Ice Cola. As if taking a page from Coca-Cola's book, PepsiCo executives decided to use the smaller brand for this experiment. It's like getting your least favorite friend to try the trampoline first. Ironically, Pepsi didn't know yet the real reason Coke had selected Tab to compete with Crystal Pepsi, so they likely just assumed that it was safer than risking their flagship product's name once again. And in a rare case of double irony, Pepsi's misunderstanding of Coca-Cola's Tab Clear strategy turned out to be a good decision, as both Crystal and 7-Up Ice quickly went flat. In 2013, a now defunct satire website known as the Wall Street Sentinel made an announcement that put the small but excitable community of clear soda lovers on high alert. Crystal Pepsi would make a valiant return to supermarket shelves in early 2014. Whether nobody noticed the report came from a joke website or they just wanted to believe in a gentler universe, the news was taken at face value by enough people for the story of the clear soda's return to go viral. Whatever the case, the Examiner quickly got to the bottom of the rumors and debunked them by February 2014, to the dismay of Crystal Pepsi fans everywhere. It seemed their cola was doomed to bitter opacity forevermore. Just as the memory of Crystal Pepsi once again began to fade from public consciousness, a trained competitive eater named Kevin Strahl literally heaved the beverage back into pop culture relevance. Thanks to a 2013 viral YouTube video in which Strahl quickly drained every drop of a 2-decade-old bottle of the stuff, and then 45 seconds later expelled every last drop of it, passion for the soda was reignited. In the video, Strahl expresses misgivings about drinking the soda, which he says he paid too much money for. Given that, at the time of the recording, the bottle was 20 years old, we tend to agree. Soda doesn't age so much as congeal. Deciding to drink it anyway, he says he hopes it will be like getting in a time machine with Doc Brown back to 1993 so he can feel like a kid again. Things take a turn for the worse after his first few sips. Apparently deciding to just rip off the Band-Aid, the YouTuber chugs the rest, at which point his body rejects the soda harder than Van Halen fans rejected Gary Cherone. If you're planning to seek out the video, we advise you to tread carefully around the 3-minute and 50-second mark and beyond. Despite the fact that the drink made him purge his Pepsi, the video's viral success, for some weird reason, led to the beginning of an internet petition to bring back Crystal Pepsi, hopefully in a more glamorous way than Strahl's stomach brought it back. Nearly 2 decades after the failed experiment that was Crystal Pepsi, Strahl's viral video led to a resurgence in popular demand for the beverage that caught the attention of the PepsiCo marketing team. In response, they decided to launch a consumer study to determine whether bringing the soda back full-time would be worthwhile. And so, the Crystal Pepsi Sweepstakes was born. In a 24-hour submission crunch, people were invited to use 1,000 of their Pepsi Pass points to enter the sweepstakes through either the Pepsi mobile app or the company's website. It was a pretty bold assumption that consumers would be familiar enough with Pepsi's reward system to readily take advantage of the sweepstakes, but it was likely just another way to get people to buy Pepsi. The prize? A 6-pack of highly sought-after Crystal Pepsi. And for those who hadn't gathered enough Pepsi stubs to reach the 1,000-point threshold, Pepsi generously provided promo codes for the value on their social media accounts. The company then selected 13,000 lucky winners to receive the transparent 6-packs. On August 8, 2016, Crystal Pepsi made a surprising return to supermarket shelves thanks to an apparent resurrection of consumer demand. Due in part to a Change.org petition, Pepsi decided it was time to give the defunct soda another go. Using a scarcity tactic to entice customers to buy, Pepsi announced the limited release of Crystal Pepsi in both the US and Canada with a 20-ounce can priced at $1.79 in US dollars. While no one knows exactly why PepsiCo brought back the product just then, some believe the sudden resurfacing of the drink could have something to do with the fact that soda sales in the US had been plummeting, and execs were keen for a way to revive some interest and goodwill. In an interview with Fast Company, David Novak, the person credited with the creation of Crystal Pepsi, provided his own insights on the subtle rise and sudden fall of the clear soda phenomenon. Asked about what he took away from that debacle, Novak called the whole thing a tremendous learning experience. He went on to explain that while he still thought it was the best idea he ever had, he admitted the execution left a lot to be desired. In Novak's own words, people were saying we should stop and address some issues along the way. And they were right. It would have been nice if I'd made sure the product tasted good. There's a reason Sammy Hagar never got a Crystal Pepsi tattoo to go with his Cabo Wabo ink. The sobriety with which Novak is able to reflect on the failure of a product so close to his heart shows how dedicated PepsiCo was to making the beverage work. After all, you don't drop all that coinage on Van Halen and the Super Bowl to cancel the drink a year later. However, whether he was right that an improved flavor or a different marketing strategy would have saved the beverage will likely remain a mystery. For now, Crystal Pepsi haunts the collective nostalgia like a ghost, which is appropriate because it's invisible. So what do you think? Crystal Pepsi or 7-Up Gold? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other Weird History Food videos.